two.
I have two.
If we can get them out.
Hi everybody. First off, just want to thank everybody who got here. Thank you, Dr. Key, for having me and everyone else for welcoming me to this space. This is my first panel ever, not just as a speaker, and so it's a little bit out of my league. But I'm also excited at the chance to share my experiences and learn from everybody. So, my story, we have time for some questions. Without further ado, the queer experience: pressures, freedoms, and dangers as presented in Left Hand of Darkness. The year is 1969. Gender forms a political landscape that disadvantages women, forcing them into motherhood and the wife life. Falling outside of those norms is dangerous for women. Queer's life. Many end up in institutions or die by suicide. But the sexual revolution is chipping away at heteronormative values. Gay rights movements are gaining some momentum. In just a few months' time, you will see the Stonewall riots, and you are writing Left Hand of Darkness. You want to offer an escape from the heterosexual matrix, create new worlds free from or in direct opposition to the gender binary. Exploring these imagined differences, you and readers together question cultural expectations and norms. In a world without reference to the heterosexual matrix and gender binary, Ursula K. LeGuin connects queer theory and science fiction. This connection serves as a refuge from the world, which is still a dangerous place for those who don't conform to cultural expectations. We still learn the gender code from birth, and it permeates every aspect of culture. The year is 2023. 568 anti-trans bills have been introduced around the country. 83 have passed. 360 are still active. I did have to update these numbers between submitting this paper in August and today's panel. Many of these bills outlaw basic health care, education, and legal recognition. Some outlaw the right to exist in public. Though some schools in the U.S. discuss gender and sexuality openly and support students' chosen pronouns, it is rare, and in many states illegal. Access to education is the vital first step in understanding the self. Without it, many live a life of dysphoria and dissociation, feeling ostracized by the pervasive culture of cisgender heterosexuality. Science fiction can serve as a tool for people to imagine a world where we can openly discuss queerness, where society is so radically different that the pressures of our world don't even exist. Left Hand of Darkness questions the gender binary and imagines the difference in a world without it. We can use lessons from Left Hand to reflect on the transgender experience today in themes of isolation and injustice, alongside safety and inclusion, corruption and deception, alongside acceptance and trust. LeGuin's imagined world flips the script on our gender binary, allowing us to question the validity of it. Genly, a cishet man from Terra, is out of place in a world where everyone is androgynous, except during Cameron. For most of the novel, the envoy struggles to see people as androgynous, even Estrogen, his closest companion. He admits that it affects his trust in Estrogen, despite his awareness of his own fault. Genly's narrative becomes questionable in this light, as does his character and the system that influenced it. So, can we really blame Genly for his conformity when we are familiar with the world he's from? Other investigators of the planet also had difficulty understanding and accepting the Athenian culture. This is almost impossible for our imagination to accept, one investigator remarks, and rhetorically asks, what is the first question we ask about a newborn baby? This question points out the pervasiveness of gender norms and makes us question whether sex or gender ought to play such significance in our lives. It allows us to wonder at what ought to be, which leads one to also wonder what could be, chance we could escape this reality. Escaping into LeGuin's imagined world, readers can find the freedom to choose and express their own gender, identity, and sexuality. EagleCon investigators know how different the social structure is on Gethin. There is no division of humanity into strong and weak halves, an investigator remarks. The whole tendency to dualism that pervades human thinking may be found to be lessened or changed on winter. There is no war on Gethin and no rape. Though LeGuin is not directly blaming misogyny, hypermasculinity, or other toxic aspects of the gender binary for the violence on Earth, there is a suggestion. Dividing the world into two kinds of people is where the trouble begins. The flip script illustrates how it feels to be an outsider, the trouble of falling outside the binary, except, in LeGuin's world, heterosexuality is a strangeness in a world of androgyny. Genley's dissonant worldview isolates him, mimicking the isolation of the queer experience in a binary society. In Gethin, he's persistently cold. He refers to it endlessly, calling himself a tropical bird in sparkling lungs. This constant discomfort I understood. I felt it in myself, in cognitive dissonance and dysphoria, as early as I remember making decisions about what to wear and how to play, a 6-year-old's conception of gender. I dressed like a tomboy, played with the boys, but even this freedom was limited into a binary division. I wasn't a boy, but I didn't really feel like a girl either. And navigating this was foggy for me well into adulthood. Though, as the envoy says, there are things that outweigh comfort. A constant feeling of detachment can make us feel alien even in our own world. And even if we layer up, in this metaphorical sense, enough to find ourselves comfortable, that alienation can end up coming from others. I'll get back to that later. Estrabin illustrates the dangers that queer people experience in a society of hatred. For suggesting King Argivan consider Genley's proposals, Estrabin is exiled, death awaiting him upon return. He could not turn to anyone for fear of putting them at risk of the corrupt government. In his exile, Estrabin has no money, no friends. When queerness has been made criminal, queer folk and their families have had to, and still have to hide. A trans individual might hide their identity from their family or their friends, for the fear that the people they love might also become victims of homophobic hatred and violence. In the US, the threat to transgender individuals has been immense. Backwards movement has been made in spades with the wave of anti-trans laws introduced this year. 568. That's more than 10 for each state. The danger is not only in the laws passed, it is also in the culture that the laws reflect. It is a culture of hatred, of ostracism, of discrimination. It makes criminals not just of queers, but of their allies too. This, Estrabin would understand. He grapples with being labeled a traitor. Though he sought not to weaken his country, it is a name that sticks, that fits, that convinces. I was half convinced myself. When we queers are called unnatural, immoral, wrong, when we are condemned or denied the rights to love and marriage and freedom of expression, it can convince us that we have failed in some way at being human. There is some relief and some safety and acceptance on this planet. There is a place that gives us hope. The Handra, also called foretellers, practice the art of knowing the future, or rather, seeing all of time all at once. Despite their ability to see all, they strive for ignorance, for finding the sameness, likeness, wholeness of all things. In the group gathered for a foretelling, all voices are important. Weavers, as well as the chimera and the pervert and the zanies, these psychopaths left uncured because they too have their own song to sing. The Handra respect the value of diversity. The Otherford vastness allows us a glimpse into a world of equality, of sameness and safety. It gives more than acceptance to all voices. It gives value to them. The Handra also challenges the voices of those who threaten that safety. Genley is dumbfounded at the Handra way of prizing ignorance. Fax, answering him, says that the Handra perfected and practiced foretelling to exhibit the perfect uselessness of knowing the answer to the wrong question. This line puts chills down any reader's spine. Being androgynous and non-binary, this question reads in a particular way. I am challenged constantly with the questions, what are you, and who do you sleep with? Most of the time, these questions come from someone entirely lost on the subject, someone looking to fit me into old boxes. To me, these are the wrong questions, and they are looking for a useless answer. In danger, in exile, relegation to a ditch, one can at least find company. Esterman found community at the fish house. He was accepted, lent money, fed stolen food when he could not work. On the Go Brain Ice, Esterman and Genling finally understand and begin to trust each other. These two examples of acceptance speak directly against the isolation of being queer. They offer us hope, even in the darkest of places. Perhaps especially in the dark places where we need it most. Left-handed darkness tosses out the gender binary, and so gives us a world that questions its validity and how our culture limits, harms, and endangers queer people. It shows us a man, Genling, trapped in his own stereotypical thoughts, and shows how that mindset limits him. In that same character, we find familiar feelings of isolation. It shows us a society, a Handra, that seeks the oneness and sameness of us all, where we can find acceptance and safety. It shows us a friendship, rocky, but nonetheless powerful in its potential to show us the light that is the left-handed darkness. With this pair, LeGuin acknowledges the danger of being queer, which is exceptionally important to recognize in our current political climate that is endangering the lives of queer, especially transgender people today. Ursula K. LeGuin gives us a chance to escape our world, find somewhere different where we can feel more at home.
Thank you guys for sharing your two wonderful papers. Let's open it up for questions.